think last time we spoke was almost exactly about a month ago. Not that anything has changed, but what have you guys been busy with since then?
Well, we've been busy trying to understand the size of the liabilities of those various developers, and quite frankly, it's a minefield. It's pretty much impossible to assess the exact amount of liabilities based on public information because the structures are just so complex.
Right. What do you think is behind, though, at least on the Evergrande specific part? Some of these bonds have rallied 20–30% over the last month or so. What do you think is behind that?
Well, it's easy to rally when you're trading at 25 cents and you go up to 30 cents.
Right.
That's just almost a normal day's move if you were trading a little bit higher. But ultimately, it's a little bit of optimism that is, sort of mind-boggling in my mind, based on coupons being paid, and ultimately a lot of the supply may have been cleaned.
And we were talking about this during the break. What is surprising, but also not surprising, Evergrande actually hasn't defaulted.
That's right, and it's a good question on why they have not defaulted. There is no doubt in my mind that a restructuring is going to be needed at some point in the very near future. So why do you continue to pay the interest within the grace period? Supposedly because you want to complete a few transactions without the oversight of creditors.
Well, this restructuring, which, as you point out, could be one of the largest ever, at least in the Asia-Pacific, there will, I would imagine, involve some form of government intervention. That's a fairly fluid concept, of course, I'm throwing out there. Take an educated guess, Michel. In what form do you think the government's going to get involved here?
Well, the way the government seems to be heading is not to be directly involved, but may help to facilitate some transactions through asset sales to state-owned enterprises that then may take control of a large portion of the assets and at the same time will provide some liquidity for restructuring to take place.
Okay, now the three red lines, I mean, we all know, of course, what that is in terms of just being able, well, at least Beijing coming in and saying don't cross these lines as far as leverage. It brings to mind Kaisa, for example, which was the company that really came under focus in the last couple of days or so. Do you think the three red lines, if you abide by that, how reliable of an indicator is that to you? That a company that does meet those requirements or standards doesn't come under market or liquidity stress?
Yeah. Well, sadly, it's not terribly reliable, and you could argue that to a certain extent, the three red lines have sort of backfired because it's pushed some of the developers to create structures, to joint ventures, to guarantees that are maybe not guaranteed in a few days throughout the year, so that you can manipulate the three red lines to show less leverage, while in the meantime increasing your leverage and increasing the opacity of your balance sheet.
So the likelihood then, and it's really anybody's guess at this point, is that Evergrande restructures, but then other smaller developers default. Is that a reasonable base case to have at this point, given the current information we have?
Yeah, I actually think that it's the same, right? Ultimately, you are defaulting to be restructured. So the majority of the developers that have defaulted, recently, and those that will default soon, will end up doing some form of restructuring with some form of debt extension. So not terribly different than the scenario where Evergrande is most likely headed.
So what do you think's ahead?
What I think is ahead is at some point some form of proposal and negotiations both onshore and offshore, which will mean a very long extension of the debt maturities, and potentially or most likely with low coupons or peak interest for a couple of years, and combined with some form of asset sales.
Right, and we started out this interview, Michel, with you saying, we're still trying to figure stuff out. I mean, even a distressed house like yourself is trying to figure out really where the rules are here. It brings to mind that this market, there are a lot of firsts, right? There's a lot, we're trying to figure out in what way the legal system is going to protect, say, bondholders. We're trying to figure out what the rules are from the government. The reason I bring those two things up is we had the downgrade, I think it was Moody's on Aoyuan, one of the developers. I guess my question is, for someone like you, how much more do ratings agencies actually know if all of us are trying to figure out what really remains outside the purview of public information?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what, they probably have better access to information than we do. But, as I said, investing in Chinese properties or in Chinese offshore bonds is a bit of a minefield, because it's very difficult to assess the pie. You don't have a ton of information on the land bank, on the exact locations, and on the hundreds and thousands of projects. And on the other side, you don't truly know the extent of the liabilities and where you sit in the structure.
Michel, before I let you go, final question very quickly, please, if you can. You have a nice smile on your face. I'm guessing you guys are active still in the market this week.
We are super active, right? The thing I can tell you is that the market is more attractive than it was a month ago. But we have some answers, but not many. And we've got to run through many assumptions. And I know the analysts in the office are getting exhausted. You're running through hundreds of pages and annual reports and trying to find some notes that will help them to come to a conclusion.